Time for me to leave.
Hi, I'm David with EV World News. I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. I'd ask you how it's going, but I know you're not doing that great, so we'll just skip that part.
I have a root canal in the new year coming up.
Yeah, so Bill is not real appreciative of life right now, but we'll see what we can do today. Anyways, we're going to talk about some different, a little bit less car subjects today. We're going to talk about hydrogen ships, electric planes, electric vertical takeoff and landing, and so it'll be fun. We sometimes get some real interest in those topics.
Right, and we might want to throw in there too the proposed merger of Nissan and Honda and Mitsubishi. That's kind of like a big thing. So.
Oh yeah, I forget about that. So we talk about that a little bit. So I always forget. So Nissan owns a big chunk of Mitsubishi, right?
Nissan owns 24% of Mitsubishi. Yes.
Yes, I used to have a Mitsubishi. I had a 3000 GT twin turbo. That was really fast when they were out in the early 90s.
I think wasn't that sort of the car of choice for a while for the guys that were doing mods, and then eventually got shifted over to Subarus, or the ones that they started.
Well, no, the car they really liked was the Evo. The Evo was one you couldn't get in the United States. Okay, so it was like an illegal import, but they figured out ways to get around that.
Right.
Yeah, but this was a factory stock looking sports car. The unique thing about it was, because at the time I really wanted a convertible Vet, and then I went and test drove one, and I realized I could only drive it with the top off or the top down. I could not drive it with the top, pulled up. So it's like, well, that's kind of a useless car.
Why was that?
I'm just too tall.
Oh yeah, because you need to do what Shaq did, right? He bought let's see, what was it? He bought
I know he has a Cybertruck.
No,
I know he's driven Chrysler 300s in the past.
The Lucid. He bought a Lucid. This is the basketball player I'm referring to. I don't know what is he, 7-something.
7'4" or something like that.
Yeah, he bought a Lucid and then took it to a guy at sort of a chop shop modifier.
Yeah,
and had it made so he can fit in it, which I guess it's now a 2-door or something.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they raised the roof.
Well, they probably did that too, but they made it so that it'll fit him. So
yeah, I know people that or I've seen a video on YouTube, a guy who is about 6'11", out car shopping, and he can drive a Ford F-150.
Okay.
Yeah, so he can fit in an F-150. I've noticed before that in an F-150, I don't have to push the seat all the way back. Most vehicles, I push the seat pretty much as far back as I can, but in the Ford, there was still room to spare, so which is unusual. So, it would fit your true giants, But anyways, but back to the Nissan and Honda thing. I mean, I find that pretty fascinating that they're looking at merging. Nissan definitely needs it. Nissan, Honda all of a sudden has got a successful car in the EV space. What is it, the Prologue?
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
Prologue. And
it's selling like crazy. This is the 25 model, the first one for it?
Yeah, it's 25 model. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. and it's selling really well for Honda. I mean, I guess that's kind of a sleeper car almost. We didn't see that coming. It just popped up out of the blue.
I was mentioning a couple of weeks ago here. I was out. I do a daily walk when the weather cooperates. I do a daily walk around the neighborhood, and my walk brought me out up the street here, and there was a brand new transit stickered Prologue sitting in the neighbor's driveway. So this summer, hopefully, I'll get to go in and introduce myself. They'll be out, and I'll be out, and I can learn a little more about it.
No, that's great. That's great. But I mean, Nissan skipped hybrids completely. They have
Oh yeah,
as
yeah.
I've never heard of them having a hybrid. Doesn't mean they didn't have one at one point, but I've
I
never
don't
seen a Nissan
yeah,
hybrid of any kind.
I don't recall in my 26 years in this business, no, that they
Yeah.
didn't
I
have one.
mean, obviously they were one of the early leaders in EVs in the United States, at least with the Leaf,
Yep.
right? And the Leaf
Oh,
is
even
still
before that, they had an SUV like vehicle. It was an all EV called the Ultra. And
okay.
this was part of the California mandate. Then they had a little city one, a little city runabout called the Hyper Mini. But
Okay.
they've been in the space for a while.
Yeah, and they sell a lot of Leafs.
Oh
But
yeah,
I
most
don't know
popular
as
car for
far
a while.
as I don't know as far as for Nissan what the Leaf represents in terms of sales. Because I
Oh, probably
suspect that their
small.
SUVs probably dominate. And I mean, the Nissan Rogue's a very popular
Well, the
vehicle.
Murano,
Yeah. So
Altima or the Altima. I think Nissan Altima. Yeah,
yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah. But popular cars, but they haven't really done much, and they're really sort of losing out. I see. I always hear, oh, there's all this bad stuff for EVs or whatever. It's like, what I really see is I see Volkswagen. That wasn't really one of our topics there, but now they're planning on laying off another 45,000 workers.
yeah,
They're the
yeah,
second largest car dealer or car brand.
yeah.
They behind Toyota, and they're suffering because of Chinese EVs.
Yep. Well, the merger should it happen. I mean, it's not firm. They've signed a memorandum of understanding, so they're going
Mm-hmm.
to talk about this. They're leaving it open to Mitsubishi whether or not they want to join. Uh, but if you get those two together, that'll be the number three car maker in the world. So they're right behind Volkswagen.
Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Volkswagen, I
Um,
understand they settled that labor issue, so they may not be laying those people off at this point.
well, it's a matter of do they have the sales to support it still?
Well, yeah, true.
You know, um, you can't employ people if you're not selling, right?
Right.
And that's
If you see some of the photographs you see on the internet where whole airports and parking lots and all kinds of, odd places where they stored vehicles supposedly that they made but they couldn't sell. Those are on the. I don't know how true those are on the internet, but
yeah. Well, we know that people are excited about the Buzz, right? The ID Buzz, which
Oh
is
yeah,
the
yeah,
redone bus.
yeah.
But yeah, so Honda doesn't necessarily need this merger, but Nissan needs it.
Oh yeah.
And Nissan is struggling with sales, or another company. What's happening is a lot of these Japanese car makers sell in China and they sell in Europe.
Mhm.
And while their sales in the United States are probably remaining strong, they're getting destroyed
Yeah,
by people like BYD
yeah.
in all the other markets in the world. And the US big three are seeing that too.
Hmm.
So that's putting pressure on those. The only US company that's really penetrating foreign markets is Tesla.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Ford.
Picking
I
up.
see reports of Ford having, issues and having to pull back in Europe. So it'll happen.
All right, let's move on to China's first fuel cell river container ship launch. Now, I don't know about this picture, but
And
you were commenting.
they didn't have really good pictures. I mean, basically, it's just the hull, right? And I assume once they get it out of there, then they'll float it to a dry dock or wherever, and then they'll start adding superstructure and stuff like that to it.
Yeah. On the back, it says, I am a slow boat.
Slow boat in China.
There you go. A slow boat in
Oh,
China.
you read Mandarin, do you?
Not very well. Not very well. I always kind of wonder about people who get tattoos that are like Asian symbols.
Right.
And I'm told
Do
all the
you
time that,
understand what it is you got? Yeah.
right. And, It's
I'm
like,
a Yankee bastard, inside
yeah,
or something.
right. Yeah. So anyways, all right, Bill, tell me a little bit about this hydrogen. You saw a little
This
bit
is
there.
yeah. So basically, they have a lot of they ship a lot of goods by river, just as we do here in the United States. And of course, the vast majority, I assume, they've gotten long past the period of the sailing junks, right? You've
Hmm.
got they build super tankers, so they most of the course are all powered by dirty internal combustion engines, generally as a rule heavy crude. Maybe some of them will have a tiny fraction might be compressed natural gas or LPG. um, but this is the first one that's rolled out that has I think it's like nearly 600 kilograms of hydrogen and 240, I think, kilowatt fuel cell motors, and there are fuel cell hydrogen conversion devices, fuel cells, that then feed into a lithium battery, and then that goes into, doesn't say what type of electric propulsion. A lot of ships now are going to electric pods. So they just
Hmm.
basically have the pod hanging rather than the old style shaft coming out of the stern of the vessel and propeller. There, a lot of them now are shifting over to these pods that can actually do away with the rudder. They don't even need the rudder anymore because you just turn the pod and that pod will move you around. So many cruise ships have this now, and then I would assume you can't tell from the photograph what's much below the water line. But I would assume so that they're using electric motors either in the vessel hull, or they're using it in the steerable pods, and that's going to transport. I think it's got a range of what was like 200 plus miles. So it'll get them,
Yeah,
they're going to be
235.
235. So it'll get them up and down the river that they're going to be operating it in.
Yeah, it says it's a little over 200 feet long. It'll displace about 2,000 tons.
Yep, and I think
So,
it gave some number that I'm not familiar with, TUE or something like that, not being in the marine business. Speaking of which, of course, the Russians now have another sinking on their hand. They've lost 3 oil tankers in the Black Sea, and now they have lost one of their military cargo transports off of Gibraltar. So,
oh, that just something random,
yeah,
probably.
well, we don't know. It just something happened. Some reports said that there was a explosion on board, and the ship began to list to starboard, and down she went.
Hmm. Interesting. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
you, you could, well, I don't know. I don't know, even
This was,
like to
by the way,
speculate.
this was, by the way, the ship that was generally used to move military transport into and out of Syria. And it had 2 giant harbor cranes, that they use for
Hmm.
moving containers on and off of ships and things like that. That were, so they think, were being transported to Libya, and because this was extremely top heavy, once she began to list, gravity took its effect, and she toppled over and sank. So I saw one report saying that there were the crew members were saved, at least some of them. There's photographs of them. I think in Spain.
Hmm.
So was it just a nautical accident, or was it Ukrainian sabotage, or internal sabotage? They're having a
And there
problem
was an
now.
engine room explosion.
Yep, yep, yep.
Hmm. Well, anyways, that's I don't know. It's hard to feel bad for the Russians. It really
Yeah,
is.
I feel right. Well, you know what I do, because it's such a freaking needless, struggle that they're in. And if you watch any of the people like Peter Zion and other commentators on the political situation there. The situation. This would listening to Peter this morning. This was basically the last chance in several generations for the Russians to have enough people, manpower, and resources to be able to launch, an invasion of Ukraine. And basically, it's the country will not, in the foreseeable future, be able to recover from this. It just because of the demographic problems that they're having, the financial problems that they're having. Oil tankers mysteriously splitting in two and sinking. So, and there was I think it was either 2 or 3 oil tankers and then a grain ship. So a ship that they used to ship grain, all of them went down in the Black Sea here within the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, they've lost a lot
on the brighter side of things, over on the other side of the world in China, we've launched our first clean hydrogen. Well, assuming it's clean hydrogen, cargo, river cargo ship.
Yes, that is a stretch. It's interesting. We had another article. Chinese oil refiner produces hydrogen from seawater using renewable energy.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Now this is interesting because this is an oil refinery company. China National Offshore Oil announced that a megawatt-class seawater electrolysis plant pilot facility has completed a trial run delivering hydrogen with a purity level of 99.999%.
Wow.
It has a rated output of 200 cubic meters of hydrogen per hour and integrates core operations such as current processing, seawater electrolysis, and hydrogen purification in 5 containers. Now, 200 cubic meters sounds like a fair amount, I suppose. Who knows what they've invested in this, or whether they're trying to say it's clean. They're using offshore wind to power it.
I was wondering. I didn't really look that closely at it. I was wondering.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting process. So maybe they can use that to power the riverboat. So.
Well, yeah. Why not?
Right. No, I get it.
Not?
All right.
The beauty of a fuel cell is that water isn't lost, right? Because once you run it through the fuel stack and the membrane, it turns back into water, and it just you put it back. So you feed it out. It's pure water, by the way, so you could make it for drinking and things like that. But yeah, why not?
It's an interesting concept.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about Archer Aviation, EVTOLs. So Abu Dhabi which is in the United Arab Emirates, which is
right.
The United Arab Emirates are a loose confederation of a number of
shakedoms.
Yeah, shakedoms is about the best way you can say it. It's a bunch of area out in the desert, and they all just decided, well, if everybody else is going to be a country, we'll be a country
families.
too.
Yeah, just tribal families. Yeah.
So you've got a group that rules Abu Dhabi, you've got a group that rules Dubai, and I think there's other towns as well.
But those Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, but see, Saudi Arabia is, a separate country, so you have the Saud family or whatever. But Abu Dhabi is the first city with commercial EVTOL air taxis in 2025. So Archer Aviation is a U.S. company based out of California. And let's see what they've got here. Now, there's a few others that are similar to Archer, like Joby Aviation.
Right. Yeah.
Let me see.
Unfortunately, Ilium is no more, which really disappoints me. That's such a cool design.
Let's see. So one of the leaders of Archer says, when I've come to Abu Dhabi, I've been 15 times this year alone. They say, how fast can you get here? So they really want to get it going. They had a signing ceremony for getting the air taxi started with His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, say that 5 times
Say
fast.
that 5 times.
Between us and 8 other entities here in Abu Dhabi, public and
Just say
private.
yes, yes, sir.
Yes, Your Highness. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's too much name. I feel, I used to like watching Game of Thrones. They'd always say, they'd introduce somebody and they'd, talk about
Well,
all of
through
the
the complete
things.
parental lineage and properties
Yeah.
owned and vastly
Yeah.
under control. And
Yeah. I don't know. It was interesting to 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 hear all of that. And it's like, God, could you imagine everywhere you go, somebody's got to introduce you and
yeah.
say a whole paragraph. Yeah.
So what I haven't, I unfortunately don't have enough time in a day to dig deep down into all these stories. So I'm curious, is this going to be a on demand, like pick me up at the airport and fly me out to my wherever, my mansion or my, business interest or whatever? Or is this going to be a scheduled service between point A and point B on a regular? Because that's what I think it's Archer that's doing that in San Francisco, where they're
Yeah.
going to
Well, in
have
this
various
case,
pickup points. And
these are private rides. They're going between public and private helipads for takeoff and landing. There are hundreds of cities that want air taxis. Abu Dhabi's the first. That'll be a lighthouse to the world. These air taxis are safe. Yeah, they don't really get into too much about
the specifics, yeah, that's why I'd
yeah,
love.
like what's it going to cost to take one of these.
Yeah, could we get His Highness on the air on and
Yeah.
interview him and find out?
Yeah, I'm sure they'd love to
If
do
you're
that.
listening, sir,
Yeah.
we would love to have you on and talk about this in the minute detail. Or hey, somebody from Joby talk to us.
Yeah, we designed the aircraft for trips between 20 to 50 miles, but we'll be able to go as far as 100 miles. Battery is 400 kilowatt hours in capacity. That's pretty sizable. I mean, that's
a pretty good size battery.
That's about 5 car batteries.
Yeah, that's about twice the what's in a Hummer.
Yeah, so it has a cruising speed of around 156 miles per hour. The Archer Midnight will carry up to 4 people plus the pilot and some luggage. Yeah, so it's designed to be something that's faster than a helicopter, more energy efficient.
Quieter.
We have in the UAE, we have a $6.2 billion order book across 5 of the largest airlines: United, Southwest, Indigo, Etihad, and Japan Airlines. I didn't know Southwest had service in the UAE, but
I think I don't think they're referring to the UAE. Aren't they referring to just contracts that?
Maybe that was all over. Yeah, there must be all over, because I just thought that was interesting to mention Southwest.
That's the company that has that.
Half the world's population lives in cities. By 2050, it'll be 2/3. The populations are growing far faster than infrastructure can handle. Roads aren't going to be enough. You need to take advantage of the third dimension to get in and around our cities. Yeah, well, I think that's pretty true. Let's see. Well, anyways, here's, just show this real quick. Their product looks like, I guess, any other vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, because it's got the propellers are up there. As it gets in the air, they start rolling forward and it flies like a plane. When it lands, they roll back and, they work like a helicopter. So, so one thing, Abu Dhabi is actually spread across a network of 200 islands. So that makes it geographically a little different.
I did not know that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So
you think it, I mean, I've looked at it very closely on Google Maps, or on Google Earth and that area, because back when we were doing the evacuation of the U.S. forces and people out of Afghanistan, that was where many of the aircraft Air Force transports that were getting people out. That's where they were taking them to, and then turning around, they were flying back. So I got a chance to kind of look at the route that they flew, and in Google, it's interesting. In Google Earth, you can actually assume a pilot's view. So I actually flew once all the way to Tehran and back. No, that's Iran.
That's in Iran.
Yeah, that's Iran. No, oh, come on. Good Lord.
What country?
In Afghanistan.
Jalalabad?
No.
Kandahar?
No, capital. Oh, come on. Why? It's so much in the news. Yes. Yeah.
Kabul.
Yeah. So I basically followed the route that one of the, these were C-117s, I think, that were flying most of those trips. So I kind of assumed that and just flew it, and I tell you, I have just nothing but the highest regard for the crews that flew that. We can talk about quad policy and all that, but as far as the people that actually implemented that I'm going to call it a rescue operation, retreat, whatever you want to call it, they did a hell of a job. I can't imagine how they handled that. What was interesting is every now and then you'd follow them on flight radar, and there would suddenly be another airplane that appears not far from Kandahar. So I'm assuming that those were probably tankers that were out there, running in orbit, and then they turn their ADS off and disappear.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So according to Archer, all you need is an 18 by 18 meter, basically helipad, which is about 60 foot by 60 foot.
Yeah.
And it's just like a regular helicopter. No difference. It's just these are electric, and they also, they fly faster because they convert to an airplane when they're up in the air.
Right.
Anyways,
and it doesn't require as much power because you're not having to use the lift of the propellers. Now you're using the lift off the wings to produce forward motion.
So let's talk about Pipistrel. We've covered Pipistrel before, and it's about a $200,000 electric aircraft, and it looks a lot like it's similar, same idea as a Cessna 172. It's a little plane designed to trainer.
More like the Cessna 150 or 152 model. It's more that, because the 172 is a larger four-place.
Oh, it is. Okay.
But this is a smaller, probably 2/3 the size of a 150, but very comparable, to a pilot and a student trainee, right?
Yep. So this aircraft is owned by Sealand Flight up in Canada, and they had their first solo of a Canadian student pilot and an electric airplane. An 18-year-old girl named Catherine Check has been learning to fly, and on December 18th, with 10 hours of training experience, she's said to have become Canada's first ever student pilot to fly solo in an electric airplane.
That is so cool. Being an old, out-of-date pilot myself and remembering my very first solo, that is cool.
Yeah, so this is interesting because you and I talked about a big use for these aircraft is basically flight schools. And,
at
cover
a fraction of the cost overall. Right. A fraction of the cost of running a pistol.
I had people say, a big part of flying is doing the checklists and going around and checking all the stuff. And
you still have to do that.
Right. I get that. But they're just saying there's not as much to do on an electric plane. So then you wouldn't be ready for a regular aircraft. It's I thought that was interesting. I mean, if you can significantly cut down that cost of becoming a pilot by
you're still going to have to, this is to help you build time. Now, at some point, they're going to say, okay, now it's time to get you over in the 172, where now you got to think about carburetor heat and magneto checks and all that kind of stuff. But you still have checklist that you have to go through on an aircraft like this, and you have to still do the walk around. What you don't have to do is you don't have to take the little cup and stick it under to make sure that the fuel that drains into the cup is blue.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, it was about $50,000 to go from learning to fly, getting to a point where you could accumulate hours without paying for it, like somebody else was paying you to flight instruct.
Right.
And so you basically get all your certifications to become a commercial pilot.
That probably is right. I imagine it's higher than that now.
I'm sure it's higher now, but I'm just saying, something like this could significantly cut down on that cost.
Yeah, you're not going to get, you're not at this point in time with energy density of the batteries in these planes, you're not going to get really any kind of cross-country training in it. And that's obviously very important if you're going to fly an airplane.
Right.
But with this type of aircraft, you can do shoot all the touch and goes you want generally, which is about an hour. And that's what, this plane is about. And that's the most takeoff and landing. Those are the two most critical parts of, of training a student to fly. Then, of course, after that's building time and learning how to navigate and get from point A to point B safely.
The story has, and the news article has one comment. I thought this is kind of funny. That's my granddaughter.
Oh, really? Good for him. All right.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was great. That's my granddaughter.
Well,
you gotta love that.
Name again?
It was Catherine Check.
Catherine or Kathy? Congratulations. Keep up the good work.
All right. How you feeling, Bill?
I'm still okay. I am not.
All right.
We can keep going.
All right. So I wanted to cover this article. Which U.S. companies receive the most government subsidies? Now, the only thing about this is I'm concerned about what really qualifies as a, quote, subsidy. Okay. So are we including government this can't be including government contracts, but I mean, as an example, and this comes from I'm not sure where this comes. Is this coming from Visual Capitalists? Mm-hmm. No, it's coming from somebody else.
No, their Visual Capital is the one that's producing the art, at least the graphs in it.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. They tend to be fairly reputable. So
yes, I agree that they are. So this is companies that receive the most U.S. government subsidies. Now, this is since 2000, so that's in the last 24 years. Boeing was number one with 15.5 billion.
Yeah.
And this does not include 13 billion from the state of Washington. So pretty significant. Intel, 8.4 billion, but they'll receive another 7.9 billion from the CHIPS Act. So it's almost doubling that. Ford at 7.7, GM 7.5. I'm wondering though, when you talk subsidy, does this include like GM got the bailout in 2007 or 2008, right? Or 2009, somewhere in there. Maybe it was 2009. Micron received 6.8 billion. Now, Micron is a big chip maker. Right. Not everybody's familiar with them. They used to be big in PCs back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And now they're still big in servers and a lot of higher end tech, but you don't really see them so much in the world of just regular PCs and stuff like that anymore. Amazon at 5.9 billion.
Well, that'll pay for Jeff Bezos's $600 million wedding.
Yeah. I saw where he was denying that he got married somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they wanted to keep it quiet. Nobody was supposed to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
A $600 million wedding with nobody knowing about it, right? Anyways, Alcoa, which makes aluminum.
I think it was going to be held in Aspen, right? I mean, Aspen's not that big a community, right?
Right.
You'd think somebody would be speaking out. Oh, we had a $600 million wedding here. I find that really questionable that he would spend. Okay, he may love her, but one person pointed out that's the same price that he spent on his yacht.
Yeah, I don't know. You got to put some of this in perspective.
Yeah.
It's like, you got the money. There's not a lot you can do with it, right? I remember somebody who was worth about
Well,
100 million did a
he,
YouTube video, and he was
he can
explaining
do
how you really can't spend more than about 300,000. He was showing what he and his wife spend on stuff,
right,
and he got to a certain point. I think that they personally spend about $50,000 a month, but they're making like 20 million plus a year.
right,
Okay. And he's saying, like, we don't eat at home. We only eat out, and we're able to spend, it was a crazy number. It was like $12,000 a month on food.
wow,
Okay. And but he went down to all these lists. He goes, okay, we fly private, but it's only this much money.
right,
And he was going through all these things, like, really, I don't know how some people spend a lot of money, because he was like going through everything. Goes,
right,
we grossly overspend on food. We know this.
right.
Okay. But
My wife doesn't want to cook.
right. Yeah. But it just interesting to see. It's like you could only spend so much on this.
Yeah.
And but it was kind of funny. So the first company that I don't know was Cheniere. Do you know who they are?
No, I do not.
5.6 million. Foxconn's and communication
Right.
devices.
Yeah.
Venture Global LNG, so that's in natural gas. Texas Instruments. You don't see much about them anymore.
No.
Volkswagen, Sempra, Energy. Well, I can tell you what they make. Nextera
Right.
Energy, Sasol. I don't know what they are.
Way
Tesla,
down. Yeah.
way down here, we got Tesla at 2.8 billion, Stellantis at 2.8 billion. Now Nevada provided another 1.3 billion in subsidies, out competing Texas, California, and Arizona for the first gigafactory. Let's see, Stellantis, Walt Disney, Nucor. Now, this based on training reimbursements, tax credits and rebates, property tax abatement, federal grants, and state or local grants. So this wasn't just, I thought this was originally just federal. This is a combination of
Yeah.
local, state, stuff like that. Boeing's by far had the most. Boeing's a major defense contractor. They've been making aircraft. I don't know when they started making aircraft. We know they were heavy in World War II, right? I mean, they had.
Yeah, let's see. They were initially they got their start as building mail planes for the what would be, they would have built the first mail planes for the first commercial mail service companies that eventually evolved into the airlines as we know them today.
Yeah,
So
a few of these
that was
companies.
a big start.
A few of these companies
by
are major defense contractors and government contractors.
Yeah.
Intel, Ford, and GM are pretty big government contractors too. But I mean, companies like Micron, Foxconn, probably TI.
Foxconn is actually a Taiwanese company, though.
Is it?
Yeah, they're the ones that build all the Apple phones, and they're the ones that have been talking about working with Sony to build electric cars.
Well,
That's the one
anyways,
that was going to build the during the previous prior to the Biden administration, that administration, they were going to build this big factory in Wisconsin or something like that, and never happened. So, but that's the company that is in talks. I think it is. They've been talks with Sony.
Oh, okay. All right. So here's something interesting. S&P Global says that they expect EVs to sales for passengers to increase by nearly a third in 2025. That'd be pretty big growth.
Yeah.
Leading an automotive industry that's cautiously optimistic amid economic and political uncertainty, a new study has shown. Sales of the most popular type of EVs are projected to hit 15.1 million, which would be 30% up from 11.6 million. That's a big number. It's 11.6 million worldwide. That's fairly similar to the amount of new cars that are sold in the United States.
However, if you read closer, you'll see that the actual number is like 1.7% increase compared to, I think they're forecasting something like almost 89 million cars to be made. And we're talking about, a fraction of that.
Well, they're saying, okay, so global light electric vehicle sales.
That number's going up, right?
Yeah, it'd be an improvement from 13.2% to 16.7%.
Right.
Yeah, so that's 4.5% of the car market that it's going to pick up.
Yeah.
That's the rise is expected despite concern over a perceived slowdown in demand in EV manufacturers scaling back. They say EV manufacturers. No, they aren't EV manufacturers. They're gas car manufacturers that keep scaling back their EV production. The EV manufacturing companies don't scale back their EV production. Now, Tesla may be scaling back production of the Cybertruck, but not their other 4 cars.
Yeah.
So it's always funny because it's like the slowdown is always in cherry-picked results.
Well, I keep wondering which side of this am I on, right? Do I see all these stories and I'm going to cheerlead for the industry, right? I want more and more people to, transition into cleaner forms of transportation. And yet at the same time, I keep wondering, every new truck I see, every new car with a, transit sticker on it, I see that all gas, and only the few. Now, obviously I'm in the heart of red America, right? In the state whose colors are red.
Yes.
So I can't expect it to be a liberal, coastal community here where, every third car I see on the road is a Tesla.
Yeah,
unlike Washington State.
Yeah, we're just a few years behind.
Yeah.
I say a few years. We're probably 10 years behind.
That's always been my benchmark number. We're generally 10 years behind the rest of the coasts.
Right. Well, more specifically, the West Coast. So the East Coast, if you go to Florida, you see lots of EVs, but it's not like California where they're just, like you're saying, it's like every fourth, fifth car.
Yeah. In the market there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge, huge difference in West Coast versus East Coast versus especially the center of the U.S. But, it's coming. You see the changes. You see more and more EVs on the road around here.
Well, maybe our governor will change over to a Cybertruck instead of a horse.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. That was the weirdest news. Governor rushed to hospital after falling off a horse. Like, I watch movies. That's usually the way, if they're going to try to kill the king, they'd set up something so the horse will trip and throw the king and kill him. That's in a lot of different
I was surprised.
TV shows and movies.
Yeah, my wife told me about this. And I mean, the extent of the damage was like 7 broken ribs and a whole bunch of other things. I thought, did the horse fall on him or that just, but then I recalled I fell off my bike a couple years ago and didn't really break a rib, but the cartilage that joins the rib to the sternum and things like that, I kind of, tweaked that a little bit, but, that was just falling a few feet at a couple miles per, even not that 2 miles an hour. I fell off the bike. I hit a sidewalk wrong, right? There was about that much of a gap between the sidewalk and the ground, and I hit that wrong. And so I've been there, but boy, that was extensive. So Governor Pillen, I wish you a speedy recovery, man.
I wonder what he was doing. Could he have been corn husking? I mean, I don't know if that's what somebody might do on a horse.
I have no idea. Horses, horses are big dogs, right?
Yeah.
But not as lovable.
Yeah. You know, it's really funny to look back at the stories from the 1890s of how horses were this huge problem, horse crap problem in all
Yeah.
the world's cities. And the answer was cars. You know,
Right.
they couldn't figure out, what do we do? What do we do? Because horses were killing people by running them over. It's not like when you pull back on the horse, it just stops.
Right.
You know, you didn't have insta brakes. It would run people over. And
you have equine diseases run through them, and you know, you have to provide them with all that hay, which of course is not as nice and condensed as a gallon of gasoline, right?
Yeah.
Huge big bundles of oats and hay and things like that to power them. So
at least nobody was talking about global warming from horse farts, right? Or maybe they were. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the paper, see if they were saying we were experiencing global warming due to methane emissions from the horses.
What was it? Edison was talking about the fact that we got to get off of coal, we got to shift over to solar. Edison, Thomas.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, the guy that stole all of his ideas from Tesla.
Well, we might get
Nikola Tesla, not Elon.
Yes.
Anyways, well, Bill, I think we've done enough for our Christmas Eve show.
Hey, thank you. And everybody have a wonderful holiday season.
Believe it or not, we're not doing a Christmas show tomorrow, and we'll be a little late probably on Thursday at best.
My wife and I are going to sit down with a family friend who is how do I put this? She, let's see. Maybe I won't go into what she does, but she's an interesting person. So, and a good friend of my daughter. So we wish you all, everybody, the best, and let's have a year of, a new year of more peace and joy. So,
all right. Well, Bill, and folks, thanks for watching today. And like I said, we'll be back an hour later on Thursday. Anyways, here we go.